My wife tried to hook up with my friend's member to embarrass me in front of everyone, so I destroyed him physically and got my revenge. Be me, 24-year-old. Ambitious, decide to move to a new city for better opportunities. Clean slate and all that jazz. Find a great job. More importantly, find a girl. Think she's the love of my life. How wrong I was. She became the one who ruined everything. Moved to this city with high hopes. Had no idea it would lead to the most painful betrayal ever. My pen pal Simon lives here. Always talked about the opportunities in the big city. Convinced me to leave my past behind. Said life would be brighter, incomes higher, people more open. Believed him like an idiot. Didn't realize how wrong I was. City is huge compared to my provincial town. Feel lost among endless streets and skyscrapers. Walls seem to be pressing on me. Passersby don't give a shit. Need to focus. Determined to succeed here. Start a new life. Break out of routine. Find something more. Doesn't matter at what cost. Simon offers me a job at his office. Not bad, right place for me. Not too hard, but needs concentration and perseverance. Getting used to new responsibilities and people. Trying to fit into this dynamic rhythm. Simon's not just a friend, but a guide in this new world. His advice makes me feel more confident. Life in the new city becomes stable. Still feel something's missing. Maybe longing for the past. Or for simpler relationships from before. Know one thing for sure. Being alone in this city is unthinkable. Gotta find someone to share this new life. Little did I know this path would lead to a fatal mistake. Weeks pass. Then I meet her. Jessica. Unlike any woman I've ever met, attracts the eye, makes me think life here might not be so empty after all. See something special in her. Promises to change my life. And she really did change it, but not in the way I imagined. First weeks at the office leave mixed feelings. Grateful to Simon for the help. Without him, wouldn't have found such a place. Competition for good positions is crazy here. Work turns out to be harder than expected. Not the responsibilities, the atmosphere. Team seems busy with their own little worlds. Can't penetrate them. People walk past, hardly noticing. Like I'm just a shadow. No friendly conversations at the coffee machine. No smiles or casual jokes in the hallways. Everyone's immersed in their own affairs. For me, a newbie, it's depressing feel like an outsider. Cold reception increases doubts. Was it worth giving up my past life for this? Catch glances of colleagues, fleeting but attentive. Like they're assessing how long I'll last. Before giving up and leaving, try to do everything perfectly. Every step in this new environment is difficult. Feeling of being under constant surveillance. Makes it hard to concentrate. One evening, after another day of small but unpleasant mistakes, Simon invites me to a cafe. Been planning this for a while. Kept postponing because of work. Fatigue overwhelming. Decide it's a great opportunity to get away. Simon's always known how to find the right words. We're sitting in the cafe. He immediately notices something's wrong. Exhausted and tense. Can't stand it. Share my feelings with him. Talk about how hard the job is. How I feel like an outsider. Ice wall around me I can't break through. He listens attentively. Without unnecessary words. Feel I can trust him. He's the one who supported my decision to move. Need his advice more than ever. Simon finally speaks. Dispels my fears with ease. At first it even irritates me a bit. Says there's nothing unusual in my sensations. Anyone new to a team feels lost. Especially in a big city. Says it's normal. Everything will get better with time. Adds that most colleagues probably don't think about me as much as I think they do. Everyone's busy with their own affairs, their own careers. No one's deliberately trying to create difficulties for me. But there's one thing that could change my situation. He looks at me with a slight smile. Like he knows something I don't. Suggests the main problem is that I look too stressed. Too focused on work and making a good impression. Not giving myself a chance to relax. Feel the rhythm of the place. Convinces me I need a distraction. Easiest way is to start a relationship. City's big, full of people, especially women. Asks if I really think there's no one who can brighten up my everyday life. I laugh. Sounds frivolous. Mind still racing with work and details to remember and fix. Simon doesn't back down. Suggests I take a closer look at girls from the office. Many pretty and young ones. Says relationships at work could help in personal life. Make work less stressful, especially if I find common ground with colleagues. Invites me to look around. Says some of these girls are probably interested in me. Even if I don't notice, too busy trying to survive in a new place. Missing important moments. Can't help but admit his words make sense. Maybe too focused on adapting. Forgot life's not only about difficulties. Start to wonder if Simon's right. Should pay more attention to people around me, especially women. Don't know yet? This advice will lead to catastrophe, one I can't hide from. Next morning, Simon's words won't leave my head. Try to concentrate on work. Inner voice keeps telling me maybe my friend's right. Became too withdrawn into myself, immersed in thoughts of how to survive and adapt. Seems I missed something important in this seething stream of new life. Simple opportunity to enjoy moments life gives. Never really considered colleagues as potential companions. Now this option doesn't seem so unrealistic. During lunch break, decide to take Simon's advice. Strange feeling, slight panic and determination. Know if I don't take this step now, we'll drown in routine again. Miss chance to change something in my life. Break seems perfect time. Almost all office employees gathered in cafeteria, sitting at tables, joking and laughing. Stand aside, watching their carefree conversations. See a group of girls who've attracted my attention before, sitting at one of the tables, chatting animatedly. Faces relaxed, eyes glowing from pleasant communication. Take a deep breath, gather all my strength, head towards them. Approach, feel slight tension in arms and shoulders. Already decided not to retreat. Simon's words in my head. No one will judge if I just walk up and start a conversation. Small step, but seems like something huge. Walk up to the table, gather my thoughts. Begin a conversation. Turns out easier than I thought. Girls quite open and friendly. Feel tension gradually subside with each word. Conversation begins to flow more naturally. Enjoy being in their company. Moments when I forget about work. Completely immersed in communication. Seem almost therapeutic. What strikes me most, one girl named Jessica. When she speaks, seem to forget about everything around me. Her smile so sincere, immediately captivates me. Her features seem flawless. Can't take my eyes off her. Jessica, not only beautiful, surprisingly pleasant to talk to. Her voice sounds calm, tinge of lively interest. She asks questions, laughs, feel at ease in her company. Talk about various little things. Work, films, city events. Don't notice how time flies. Lunch break comes to an end. As she says goodbye, Jessica smiles at me. Feeling of warmth emanating from her stays with me for rest of the day. Keep catching myself thinking about continuing this conversation. Jessica, not just a nice colleague, seems like someone who could change way I think about life in this cold city. Return to desk. Difficult to concentrate. Thoughts about Jessica constantly distract me. Her smile, her voice, her charm, all spinning in my head. Realize this lunch break more than just pleasant conversation with colleagues. First step towards something new. Perhaps exactly what I've been missing in recent weeks. Not sure it will lead to something serious. Not used to building high expectations based on single conversation. Conversation with Jessica left deep impression. Feel I want to continue this communication. Doesn't matter where it leads. Main thing is I took first step, return home that evening with feeling of satisfaction. Something new for me. Not just success at work or professional achievements. Feeling I found something important for myself. Something that could fill emptiness inside. Understand future unpredictable. Lot depends not only on me. Still hope this conversation will be beginning of something more. After that conversation with Jessica at lunch, can't stop thinking about her. Her smile, soft voice, all remains in my head throughout working day. Every time try to concentrate on another task. Thoughts again return to way she looked at me. Along with these thoughts comes feeling of anxiety. Realize can't afford to act openly. Office people always attentive to what's going on around them. Unlikely anyone would pass by without noticing. If I began to pay too much attention to Jessica, rumors spread like wildfire in places like this. Last thing I want is to become target of office gossip. Question haunts me. Don't know how to improve relationship with Jessica without attracting too much attention. Don't want our communication to become topic of discussion on every corner. Simon would probably have advised something. He's just getting ready to go on business trip. Answer to my question comes completely unexpectedly. Turns out every Friday, this office has its own ritual. Colleagues jokingly call it Office Plankton Day. Time when everyone gets together after work. Go to nearest cafe or bar. Celebrate end of work week. Relax in informal atmosphere. Simon told me about this. Immediately realize its ideal opportunity. Get closer to Jessica without arousing suspicion. Decide to discuss this with Simon. He only encourages me, advises not to miss this chance. Only thing that darkens my mood. Simon himself can't go to this meeting. His business trip begins very next day. He'll be gone for 2 whole weeks. Despite this, he confidently states I shouldn't worry. This evening could turn out to be successful for me. When Friday arrives, feel a little nervous. Agreed to meet colleagues in cafe after work. Deliberately stay in office a little longer, so everything would go naturally, without unnecessary fuss. Colleagues begin to leave their workplaces. Soon we go to nearest establishment, where we plan to spend evening, 12 of us. At first we all sit together, joking and discussing past week. Soon becomes clear, such large number of people creates certain difficulties for communication. Conversations begin to break down into several separate groups, everyone finding their own company. Jessica sits a little to side, quietly watching everything happening. This moment seems ideal to approach her. Continue our acquaintance. Sit down next to her. Start conversation with small joke about how quickly colleagues scattered into small groups, barely having time to reach cafe. Jessica smiles. That smile again makes me forget about everything around. She turns out to be easy to communicate with, as if there's no tension or official barriers. Soon we're enthusiastically talking about everything under sun, from work to random topics. She already knows I'm a close friend of Simon. This seems to soften her attitude towards me even more. She's curious about how we met, tell her story of our friendship, which began long ago when we corresponded on various forums, discussing completely random topics. Gradually, our conversation becomes deeper. Learn more about her. Turns out Jessica's from small town. Her path to this office just as difficult as mine. During conversation, we manage to drink several cocktails, which makes atmosphere even more relaxed. We laugh, discuss films we've recently watched, share our impressions of working in office. This evening, something completely different than I could have expected. Feel like we really understand each other. Longer, our conversation continues. Clearer it becomes. There's something more between us than just casual acquaintance. As evening begins to end, noise in cafe begins to die down. We decide to go outside to get some fresh air. At that moment, realize we have opportunity to be alone. Streets practically empty. Only rare cars pass by. Night air refreshing after stuffy cafe. We walk side by side, continuing conversation. Feel there's special connection between us. That doesn't require unnecessary words. This moment's special. We look at each other. No, this is not just casual evening with colleagues. This is start of something more important to me. Friday evening turns out to be great opportunity. Get to know colleagues better. As expected, people gathered in cafe near office, ready to forget about hustle and bustle of work. Relax after hard week. Feel a little nervous. This evening could be an important step, not only to communicate with colleagues, but also to spend time with Jessica. Arrive early. Take seat closer to edge of table, hoping Jessica would sit nearby. Colleagues begin to join in one by one, 12 of us. Quite large group for ordinary evening in cafe. At first, everyone sticks together, as often happens at beginning of such meetings, joking and discussing work issues, laughing at small problems. That seems so important during day, soon becomes obvious. Almost impossible to keep everyone's attention on one conversation. People begin to divide into small groups. Everyone finds company to their liking. Evening begins to flow more intimately for each such mini company. Notice Jessica sitting alone, silently observing what's happening. See my chance in this. Move closer to her. Without attracting attention of others, begin conversation with light joke. Jessica smiles at me again. That's all it takes to make me feel comfortable. Start talking about what's happening around us. About work. About how quickly people find each other in such situations. Dividing into small groups. Remember conversation with Simon about relaxing. Just letting yourself go with flow. Now, sitting next to Jessica, realize this is exactly what I needed to do. With every minute of communication with her, feel tension accumulated over week recede. We talk about everything. Work, life, in big city, films we've recently watched. Communication with her, so easy. Don't even notice how quickly time flies by. Jessica suddenly mentions she knows about my friendship with Simon. This gives our conversation even more openness. She asks how we met. Gladly tell her about our many years of communication. We met on one of forums, when we were both interested in discussing films and music. At first it was just correspondence, but then, when I decided to move, Simon offered me a job in office where he already worked. Tell her about how difficult it was for me at first, how hard it was to adapt to new place. But thanks to Simon, I felt I could get back on my feet. Jessica listens with obvious interest. Our conversation soon turns to her story. Turns out she also did not immediately find her place in this city. Moved here several years ago from small provincial town. her path no less difficult. She talks about difficulties of adaptation, how hard it was for her to find job and make new friends in big city. Feel that she and I found a lot in common. This helped me get even closer to her. Time flies quickly. Seems that others have almost forgotten about us, immersed in their own small companies. Can't tear myself away from Jessica. She isn't just beautiful. Her intelligence and sense of humor make me admire her even more. Her voice calm and soft, soothing. Her thoughts and views on life seem surprisingly close to mine. When cafe begins to empty, noise of conversations begins to die down. Jessica suggests going outside to get some fresh air. Great decision. Night warm and quiet. We can calmly continue our conversation away from bustle of cafe. Go outside. Walk slowly along deserted street, enjoying fresh air and silence, which contrasts sharply with hubbub inside. Street quiet, only occasional car passing by. Feel that this moment is that moment of solitude, when some special connection begins to emerge between us. Jessica looks relaxed. Her smile now seems even warmer. Continue talking, but now our conversation different, not about everyday things, but about more personal things, about what's really important to each of us. We talk about life, about dreams, about what each of us wants to achieve. This evening, more than just get together with colleagues. Know this conversation with Jessica is turning point. We became close, feel that something more beginning to emerge between us. This moment special. Understand that from this day, our relationship would change. That evening ended in a way I could never have imagined. Jessica and I, standing on street, exchanging glances and words, suddenly realized something special had arisen between us. In silence of night, under light of street lamps, feel tension between us disappear, giving way to something deeper. Without saying word, we come closer to each other. Evening ends with a kiss. Can't believe it happened. Everything I dreamed about in recent days suddenly became unforgettable reality. We kissed, seemed like world around us froze. So unexpected and at the same time so natural. Knew that now everything would be different. But if right now I could go back in time, would stop communicating without waiting for her to cheat. Next morning, wake up feeling euphoric. Memories of previous evening come flooding back. Can't stop thinking about Jessica. Lay in bed, analyzing every detail. Her smile, her laugh, way she looked at me at that moment. But after short moment of joy, another feeling comes. Need to prepare for our next meeting. Evening meeting scheduled right there on street when we said goodbye. Agreed to meet again next day. Makes me little nervous. Understand that now everything had become more serious. Want to be on top. Before heading to meeting, decide worth freshening up, appearance lightle. Head to barbershop to clean myself up. Sit in chair, hairdresser works on haircut. Think about how this day could be new beginning. New city, new job, new relationship. All seemed like series of random events. Suddenly began to form into one whole picture. Perhaps this meeting with Jessica, exactly what I've been missing lately. Feel this is not just flirting, not just infatuation, but something more significant. By evening, I'm ready. Jessica and I agreed to meet in city center. Take walk and enjoy evening air. Know this time it would no longer be just friendly meeting. From moment we kissed, our relationship moved to next level. Feel like it's start of something bigger. Arrive at meeting place. Jessica already waiting for me. Her smile lights up evenings. Immediately feel comfortable. Go for walk, chatting about small things. But now our communication seems much more personal, deeper. Walk along quiet streets, talking about everything in world. Enjoying light evening breeze. Walk past parks, small cafes, and street musicians. Creating special atmosphere of city. Conversations touch on variety of topics. Work, future, dreams. Learn more about Jessica this evening than an entire time we met. Turns out to be person with whom I could talk endlessly. Her thoughts and views on life coincide with mine. Understand that with every step, we're getting closer. Evening passes in one breath. Still remember that I didn't even notice how time flew. We laughed, discussed plans for future. Felt that from that moment, our relationship began to become more and more serious. At some point, we stop again. Everything that happened earlier seems to repeat itself. Same spark that made us kiss again arose between us. This kiss already different, not accidental, but conscious, full of meanings and expectations. After this evening, realized that everything had changed. Jessica had become part of my life. Could no longer imagine what would happen if we stopped communicating. Our relationship developed rapidly. From that day, we began to spend more and more time together. Met almost every evening, walked, went to cafe. discussed work and plans for future. She became person I was looking for without even realizing it. Jessica and I were on same page. Felt like our relationship was growing every day. Didn't know what lay ahead, but was sure of one thing. Ready to move on and develop this relationship without looking back. 2 weeks have passed since Simon left on his business trip. During this time, my life has changed dramatically. Relationship with Jessica has taken serious turn. Spent almost every free minute together. Became something of ritual. In evening, we walked around city, discussed our everyday life, laughed, and what spoke of our sincerity and openness to each other was that even then we were building small plans for future. She became an integral part of my life. Began to realize that this relationship was truly important to me. When Simon returned, felt that first thing I had to do was share my joy with him. Agreed to meet at one of bars where we used to go regularly, to discuss how 2 weeks had gone for both of us. Familiar ritual for us. Talk about everything, drink beer, and discuss latest events. Arrived at bar early. Had time to think about how everything had changed during this time. Just recently was just newbie in office. Reserved and alien among colleagues. Now in serious relationship with Jessica. Simon was one who pushed me to take this step. Knew he would be happy to hear how it all worked out. When Simon finally walked in, he looked tired but happy. We greeted each other, ordered drinks, and fell into conversation. For first few minutes, Simon talked about his journey. Talked about how he had to work with new team. How he adapted to different office. That he had interesting meetings and even unexpected discoveries. His story full of small details that seemed important to him. Listened to him with interest, but couldn't wait to share my news. When he finally finished his story, it was my turn. Decided to get straight to point. Taking deep breath, said that I had great news. Told him that everything was very serious with Jessica. That over these 2 weeks our relationship had become almost inseparable. Described with real delight our walks, our conversations, how we became closer every day, how happy I felt next to her. But as soon as I mentioned Jessica's name, noticed that Simon seemed to freeze for a moment. His face became more reserved and he became quiet. His attention seemed to wander for a while. Then, realizing that I was still talking, he returned to conversation and supported me. But his reaction still seemed a little strange. He nodded and smiled, but something in his gaze made me wonder. This was not usual expression of joy that I was accustomed to from him. He praised me and said he was happy for us, that this was great news. However, couldn't shake feeling that there was something more behind that smile, something he didn't want to talk about. Then could not understand what was causing his reaction. Was definitely sure that there was some reason why he supported me differently than I expected. Still, I was too careless. Decided to miss this moment and did not ask whether something was bothering him or not. Didn't ask any more questions. Deciding that perhaps it was just his fatigue after a long journey. We continued our conversation, but this time it seemed more superficial. Was still thinking about that moment when his reaction seemed not entirely natural to me. Something was bothering me, but couldn't figure out exactly what. At end of evening, we said our goodbyes. Simon left, saying that we would see him in office soon. I was left alone, pondering his strange reaction. When Simon returned to work after his business trip, his mood seemed to improve. He was full of energy, as if this trip had given him new strength. Told me that he had gained valuable experience working with new team. Even completed short internship for management position. Shared his plans to lead our department as soon as opportunity presented itself. Simon had always been ambitious. Now I saw in him even more determination and desire to move forward. In turn, my life now revolved around 2 things: work and Jessica. We continued to meet every day after work. She showed me city, shared stories about her life. I became more and more interested in her. Every evening filled with conversation, laughter, and long walks. Seemed almost perfect. Felt like I had found someone I could spend many years with. Everything seemed so natural and right. Couldn't believe my luck. At work, everything also went as usual. Tried to stay focused on my responsibilities, although my thoughts often wandered to Jessica. But every time I saw Simon, his slightly reserved reaction to my stories still bothered me. Seemed that something in his look and behavior hinted at something more than just friendly support. But he never said anything directly. I didn't want to bring it up. However, I was full of optimism. Job gave me stability. Jessica was like child's joy of victory for me. I was ready for new stages of my life. Simon, in turn, became completely immersed in his ambitious career, seeking advancement every time we talked. He mentioned his plans to become manager and head department. I could see that he was really determined. This made me happy. My friend was moving forward. I also had every reason to be happy for him. Quiet life could not last forever. But then I could not even think about it. Over time, began to notice something strange that had previously escaped my attention. This applied not only to Jessica, but also to Simon. It all started from those very evenings, when Jessica and I began to communicate closely. At first it seemed that everything was going perfectly in my life, but gradually little details began to emerge, making me think about things I tried not to notice. It all started when I first noticed Simon and Jessica together in an informal setting. Until that moment, their presence next to each other seemed to me something ordinary. Saw no reason to be suspicious, because both Simon and Jessica were close people to me. But recently something has changed. There was something in their behavior that caught my attention. This became especially noticeable when three of us found ourselves in office kitchen during breaks. That day started as usual. Simon and I were working on project, then decided to take short break. I suggested calling Jessica, and Simon didn't mind, but his reaction seemed little reserved. Three of us went to kitchen, where we started making coffee and chatting about latest affairs. However, I soon began to notice that conversation between them seemed strained. Simon was usually open and sociable, but now he seemed somehow distant. Jessica was also less talkative than usual. They both avoided looking each other in eyes. Their sentences were short and formal. This alarmed me little, but I decided not to dwell on it. Maybe they were just tired or couldn't find right topics to talk about. But when I went to toilet and returned a few minutes later, scene I saw made me think even more. When I returned to kitchen, they were sitting opposite each other, but not talking. Both were immersed in their phones, as if they were not interested in anything else. Seemed strange, because I was used to seeing Simon talkative, especially in company, and then there is complete silence. Seemed that, without me, there was no communication left between them. This silence was heavy. It hung in air like something inexplicable. When I entered kitchen, they both looked up and smiled at me as if nothing had happened. Felt like something was wrong, but couldn't figure out what it was. These small details, this tension in their behavior, began to bother me. But I decided not to ask unnecessary questions. Perhaps all this is just figment of my imagination. After all, Jessica was one I loved, and Simon was my friend. However, this moment could not leave my mind. More I thought about it, stronger my feeling of anxiety became. Kept asking strange questions. What could have happened between them? And why do they act as if there is some kind of invisible wall between them? Knew that sooner or later, I would have to deal with this. But for now, I could not allow myself to think that something was seriously wrong. However, deep down, I began to sense something was coming. Internal anxiety had not left me from the moment I noticed strange behavior of Simon and Jessica in office kitchen. My thoughts constantly returned to that incident, to that heavy silence that hung between them. Tried to push away anxiety, but more I thought about it, stronger feeling became that something was escaping my attention. Week passed. Following Saturday, I decided that it was time to finally figure out what I had not previously attached much importance to. Called Simon and suggested we meet at same bar where we usually discussed everything important. This time I was determined to find out what was really going on. When we met, Simon was, as usual, friendly and relaxed. We ordered a glass of beer and started talking about business, as always. But this feeling gnawed at me. In end, I could not stand it. Trying to find right words. Conveyed to him that I had noticed some strange behavior between him and my girlfriend. Said that they both behave with restraint, especially when you are together. After that, I asked directly if there was anything I didn't know about yet. Simon looked at me with mild surprise. Then a hint of what I thought was embarrassment flashed across his face. He took a sip of beer, hesitated for a couple of seconds, then replied that he had been unable to decide to have this conversation for a long time. Didn't know if he really intended to keep it secret any longer, if it weren't for my suspicions. But as it turned out, he and Jessica had known each other for a long time. According to him, he did not want to mention it earlier so as not to create inconvenience. As it turned out, in distant past, back when they were studying at university, they had a short affair, which he did not consider serious. According to him, it was only a few months, after which their paths diverged. They stopped communicating immediately from same time. Fact that they ended up in same company was unpleasant accident for him, which he was embarrassed to tell about earlier. His words, on one hand, put everything in its place. This explained reserve that I saw between them. They were just exes. I was well aware that this could happen, especially in such big city. You meet someone once, and then their paths cross again. But under different circumstances, I nodded, trying to comprehend everything I had heard. When I asked him why, he didn't really talk about it. At moment, he heard about my interest. Simon simply shrugged. After taking few more sips of beer, he looked away and said that he didn't want this to somehow affect our relationship, saying that it was long time ago and didn't matter. With words that he was happy for us and that she was good girl. He expressed confidence that we would suit each other. Seemed that he simply did not want this past to somehow interfere with Jessica's and my future. His words sounded convincing. At first glance, there was nothing suspicious in them. He spoke calmly and confidently, as he always did when he wanted to show that everything was okay. For a moment, I felt relieved. Everything seemed such simple explanation, as if it were really past that remained in past. We've all faced similar situations, but something still bothered me. Maybe it was my gut feeling, maybe it was intuition, but I decided not to go deeper. I believed that Simon was honest. His words sounded sincere. At that moment, I had no reason to doubt his support. Trying to return to previous conversation, replied that I was glad that he told me this, that now everything was falling into place. There was even hope that our relationship would not cause any inconvenience between them. In response, Simon smiled and said that there was no need to worry, because everything would be fine, since they both left it in past. This ended our conversation. We returned to discussing ordinary things, work, plans for future. But now, knowing that they had brief affair in past, I felt that it was not so simple. Maybe I was just overly anxious. Maybe it was just my fear of losing Jessica. But I was wrong, and this mistake cost me much more than I could have imagined. Several months passed. Seemed that life had returned to normal again. Relationship with Jessica remained stable. Work moved forward. Everything that seemed strange earlier was gradually forgotten. Simon went back to his work. I concentrated on daily tasks. However, events began to occur on horizon that changed usual course of things. There was news of changes in office. Our department head was preparing to transfer to another position. This caused unrest among staff. Vacant boss position looked like golden opportunity for Simon. He was ambitious, purposeful, had long strived to climb career ladder. When rumors were confirmed, became clear that position would indeed be open. Simon immediately took job. Began to develop presentation plan to present his candidacy to company's management. This was an important moment for him. He turned to me for help. Knew Simon had potential to succeed, but presentation and preparation were not his strong suit. I, on contrary, was well versed in this. Together, we could create perfect proposal. I happily agreed to help. Over next few weeks, we worked side by side, perfecting every detail of presentation. Simon was full of enthusiasm and energy, discussing ideas, plans, and possible steps to take him to position of chief. I put all my effort into this project, knowing how important it was for my friend. However, during this period, I began to notice some strange behavior in Jessica. She became more distant. We used to spend almost every free minute together, but now she began to find reasons not to meet so often. Either she had things to do, or some urgent meetings with friends, or she just wanted to be alone. Tried not to pay too much attention to it, chalking it up to fact that people sometimes need personal space. But that was just beginning. Jessica became more irritable, especially when I suggested spending evening together, or discussing how our day went. Her answers became short. Noticed that her gaze often wandered away from mine. This was unlike her. Previously, she had always been open and attentive, but now it was as if something had changed. As if an invisible wall had appeared between us. One of the most striking moments, she increasingly stayed at work late into night, offered to meet her after such delays, but she refused each time, finding excuses that sounded less and less plausible. Understood that office was always full of work, but had strong feeling that it was not only that. However, my relationship with Simon still seemed strong. We often discussed his candidacy for new position, how he planned to run department, what changes he would like to make. There was nothing suspicious in his behavior. Was sincerely happy for my friend, whose career advancement seemed almost inevitable. But still, these strange things with Jessica haunted me. Kept thinking that maybe I was exaggerating, or maybe this was all just temporary problem that would pass. But my inner voice told me that these were not just little things. For first time in long time, felt insecure in my relationship with her. This anxious feeling began to remind itself more and more often. It's been few months since Jessica and I's lives seemed perfect. Tried not to pay attention to minor oddities in her behavior, attributing everything to temporary difficulties. However, lately it began to seem to me that something had changed between us. This feeling was subtle, like slight taste of bitterness, which gradually became more and more noticeable. Typically, Friday evenings were time when our office employees would gather at cafe after work. Became tradition, kind of relaxation after a week of work. At such moments, it always seemed to me that world around was returning to its usual harmony. Jessica and I usually went to these meetings together, but that evening, something went wrong. On Friday morning, Jessica told me that she planned to go to meetings separately because she had some urgent business that she had to deal with by end of day. Didn't think much of it. Sometimes these things do happen. I'm used to trusting her. We agreed to meet at cafe later. Walked her to work, wished her good day, and went about my business. Simon was also busy. He and I were discussing final details of his presentation for position of department head. Noticed that he was in unusually high spirits. He literally glowed with confidence, as if he knew that this was just formality. His promotion was done deal. We also agreed to meet an evening, but he said that he would not be able to come on time due to business meetings. This was not unusual. Simon was always overworked. One evening I went to cafe where my colleagues had already begun to gather. Atmosphere was pleasant. There was music playing. Usual jokes and conversations about how work week went. But something about this evening seemed different to me. Tried not to dwell on it. But inner feeling of unease did not go away. Time passed, but Jessica was still not there. Checked my phone and saw that there were no messages or calls from her. At first thought that she was just late at work, as it happened before. Decided not to bother her, but then I started to notice that Simon wasn't there either. He didn't show up either, although a lot of time had passed since we agreed to meet. Feeling of anxiety crept inside me, although I did not want to admit it. Thoughts began to gather in my head in form of suspicions. Could this be just coincidence? Maybe they were both just caught up in their work, but longer they did not appear. Stronger, this uneasy feeling became. Tried to distract myself by carrying on conversations with my colleagues, but my thoughts kept returning to Jessica and Simon. Their absence became too noticeable. Its strange coincidence, both of whom I had been closest to in recent months, suddenly disappeared on same evening. Couldn't ignore it any longer. Went outside to get some fresh air and try to calm down. Evening was cool, and light wind cooled my face. But this did not help to get rid of my anxiety. Checked my phone again, hoping to see message from Jessica, but there was none. Variety of thoughts began to arise in my head. Could something bad happen? Or perhaps she just had unforeseen circumstances. Then I remembered Simon's words, that he would have a business meeting. But what if it was more than just meeting? What if something was happening behind my back this whole time, and I was too blind to notice? All those little oddities that I tried to ignore now seemed much more significant to me. Returning to cafe, tried to return to usual flow of conversation with my colleagues, but could not get rid of growing feeling of suspicion. Time passed and none of them showed up. Decided to call Jessica, but her phone was unreachable. It was strange. Usually she always answered, even if she was busy. My anxiety peaked when one of my colleagues, Rick, came up to me. Started chatting about all sorts of small things. He and I had never been particularly close, but his conversation distracted me from my anxious thoughts for a while. However, it was he who accidentally gave me very key to understanding what I was so afraid of, trying to be friendly. He said that he had recently seen my girlfriend, saying that she was so bright, it was difficult not to notice her. Hearing this, I froze, trying not to show my excitement. Asked when he saw her and where. He replied that it happened recently, just last week in one establishment not far from office. Suddenly he stopped, realizing that he was saying something that I might not like. It turned out that I understood his behavior correctly, because then he shocked me with words, that she was actually in company of man. At that moment, my heart began to beat much faster, felt shortness of breath. After that, I heard that it seemed to him that she and that guy looked quite close. These words pierced me like sharp knife. My head was spinning. Couldn't concentrate on what Rick was saying next. Tried to hold on, but everything inside began to crumble. Remembered all times Jessica had been distant. Her frequent delays at work. Her refusal to meet me in evenings. Now it all seemed too obvious. Rick, noticing that his words caused storm of emotions in me, fell silent awkwardly and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Clear picture of what was happening behind my back all this time began to form in my head. Tried to push these thoughts away, but they only intensified. Returning to cafe, realized that I could no longer be here, apologized to my colleagues and left, leaving them bewildered. Everything was seething inside me: resentment, anger, bewilderment. Didn't know what to do next. But knew one thing: what I learned today would change everything. Moment came faster than I expected. Simon was preparing for his biggest presentation. Presentation we prepared together was his key to success. Or at least that's what he thought. Knew this day would change everything for him, for me and for Jessica. Revenge I had so carefully planned was about to be fulfilled. When morning came, felt strangely calm. Every step I took was thought out. Every edit and presentation was made in such way as to cause maximum confusion for Simon. He was ready to present himself to management as best candidate for position of head of department. There was atmosphere of anticipation in office. All employees were looking forward to his speech. For many, Simon was obvious choice. I knew his confidence was genuine. We met with him shortly before start of presentation. Simon was calm, his face reflecting complete confidence in success. I wished him luck and he thanked me for my help, not even suspecting that his next few minutes would be real disaster. Knew that in few moments his whole life would change. My revenge would be accomplished. When Simon took stage and began his speech, everything went according to plan. He spoke about his achievements, about how he sees development of department. His confidence was conveyed to audience. But when moment came for key slide, I noticed his expression change. He froze, his gaze skimming over words I had added at last moment. In that moment, his confidence evaporated. Panic slowly began to overwhelm him. He began to stutter as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing on screen. There was, among other things, phrase he never expected to see. Slide said that he stole girl from his good friend. These words that I wrote into his presentation hit him like hammer. Hall froze. People began to look at each other, not understanding what was happening. Simon tried to continue, but his voice was shaking and he lost track of his words. Trying to justify himself, he began to panic more and more. At some point, he simply could not stand it. Without finishing presentation, left stage to whispers and surprised looks of audience. I watched him from side. Strange feeling of satisfaction grew inside me. Everything happened exactly as I planned. Simon, previously confident of his triumph, was destroyed before eyes of those who saw him as potential leader. He could not cope with shame and quit immediately after this situation. He decided to transfer to another city, so as not to have to deal with consequences of his failure, to avoid talking behind his back. His departure was quick and silent. Soon office stopped talking about him, and I, remaining behind scenes of this drama, continued to work on my tasks. But over next few days, began to notice changes in Jessica's behavior. She realized that something had changed. Her usual indifference towards me gave way to anxiety and suspicion. She began to look back at me more often, as if she expected me to say something that would completely ruin her life. But I didn't do it. My revenge was complete. Didn't need to point out her mistakes again. Few weeks after Simon left, I myself found myself among candidates for position of head of department. Everyone knew that Simon was main contender. But now that he was gone, my name became household name. Management appreciated my work. Soon I received what I was unofficially heading for, position that should have belonged to Simon. Jessica couldn't bear changes. Her position in office became precarious. She felt that her relationship with Simon no longer gave her privileges. Her gaze became empty when she realized that I was now her boss. Few months later, she left, simply writing letter of resignation. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask unnecessary questions, because she chose her path. And it led her to this. After everything that happened, felt like my life was finally starting to come together. Revenge I had so carefully planned brought me at least some joy. No longer felt deceived or used. On contrary, I gained new meaning. Void that betrayal left began to be filled with something new. Sense of strength and control over one's own life. My life has changed. Now I was one who controlled my destiny, not one who was manipulated. Couldn't say that I was completely happy, but consequences of those events left traces that could not be erased. But I knew one thing: I was no longer kind of person who let others control my destiny. Revenge gave me back control, and in chaos I found new, albeit bitter, form of happiness.